This is Camellia japonica, and it's an evergreen flowering shrub used in many parts of the world. Very popular for its bold flowers, which you're going to see a few of here. And I just want to talk about how to use this in design. There's a few key points about being successful with this, and what you're looking at here is a shrub that is about 5 to 6 feet tall and 3 to 4 feet wide, probably closer to 4. And that's fairly typical of residential japonica camellias. There are lots of hybrids, as you can see in these different flower types, and they all have slightly different characteristics, primarily the flower, but the plant itself tends to be in that size. Now that said, if you see areas in San Francisco and Monterey, and I'm sure many other areas, these plants can get very tall. I've seen them 10 to 15 feet tall and 6 to 8 feet wide. So they can get quite large, but that's usually not how you see them. And I'm going to address mainly using these in residential design because I don't think commercial design is frankly the best place for these, although I'm sure there's exceptions to that. As you see here, this one again is about 5 to 6 feet tall and probably 3 to 4 feet wide. Now these bloom in the winter, and that's going to lead me to one of the major points about this plant. The lighter colored flowers are very prone to what I've been told is anthracnose. And whether it's anthracnose or something else, what it boils down to is a blight on the petal. It's a petal blight, and it's a fungus. It's so the way that shows up is the petals and or the buds turn brown. And when this stuff gets on there, it can actually keep the buds from ever opening up, and sometimes they'll just fall right off. But more importantly, the ones that do open up, it turns them brown prematurely, and instead of getting the beautiful color of the flower, you're left looking at a brown flower that's quite unsightly. I've found that this is primarily happens to the lighter colored flowers that are in the white shades, and the lighter the color, the more likely they are to get that. This year has been very dry in California. It's very interesting because this fungus I'm talking about is moisture related, and these flowers bloom when we have our rainy season here in Northern California. Because it's been such a dry winter, here you're looking at a white one during this winter, and it does not have the petal blight. And I think it's a pretty straight correlation between the lack of moisture and the petal blight that I'm telling you about. So just know that most winters these bloom when it's raining, and because of that you do get a lot of this petal blight, especially on the lighter colored flowers. I'm showing you primarily pink colored flowers because they tend to not get the petal blight at all or very little of it. And so when I'm designing, I will not use the white colored flowers. It's a shame. If you're using these in, say, Southern California, in areas where they get little winter rain, I'm sure this isn't an issue. But if you're in an area where winter rain is significant, I would tell you to favor the darker colors just to avoid that potential issue. One of the things I like to clarify too about these is the difference between those and Sasanqua camellias. These bloom primarily from late January, usually February, March, and April. So February, March is the biggest bloom cycle for japonica camellias in our area in Northern California. Also, they favor regular garden water. I've seen these without any summer water near the coast, so I think once established they can be a little drought resistant, but that's not how they're going to look their best. So tend to give them regular garden water for them to look their best, and also give them a really good feeding once a year to build up this bloom potential that you see here in these different photos. Sasanqua camellias tend to bloom earlier than that, usually in the fall and the winter in our area. They have smaller, less interesting flower shape, and but also can tolerate more sun. Deer will usually leave camellias alone, but there is an exception to that when they're super hungry, but generally they're deer tolerant. And also, sun is a really important feature here. If you're near the coast, give them full sun if you can. You'll get better blooming. I found that if you give them too much shade, you'll get little or no bloom. And if you're in a warmer area, give them morning light, and afternoon by probably 11 o'clock or 12, you want them to be in shade. But give them enough light that they get otherwise they will not produce a good bloom in my experience. And I've had that happen in Central California as well as Northern California. And that is Camellia japonica.